Joining us now to discuss is radio host Tom Jordan, the host of Tom Jordan Live. Tom, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Riley, it's fantastic to see you. Thank you so much.
So I just have to start here. We saw multiple airplane crashes in the span of just a few days, maybe just about a week. And we don't know exactly the cause yet, but some people are wondering about what it could be, considering the fact that the FAA has embraced a lot of DEI initiatives in recent years. So I just want to start with you there. What do you think is really going on here, and could it be related to DEI?
Yeah, it could. And I think everything should be investigated. And I know there's been a lot of pushback to President Donald Trump's words saying that we should look at diversity, equity, and inclusion as a possible reason this happened and occurred, tragically in our nation's capital, at one of the most, one of the busiest airports in the world when it comes to what's happening in the airspace around the nation's capital. And so he mentions DEI. There's just something we know for sure. We know for sure that this airport was woefully understaffed. That air traffic control center was woefully understaffed. Why was that the case? Could it be that, we lowered the bar in the name of equity, which doesn't make anyone safer, by the way, just makes standards meaningless? If that was the case, well, then we need to look at that. What is the reason there are far too few air traffic controllers in this country, and particularly one of the most important, hubs of aviation in the world? Well, there's a lot of credence to that argument because, and the journalists have come out and say, well, Donald Trump says without evidence. No, there actually is quite a bit of evidence. And, you mentioned lawsuits and the whole paradox of inclusion. The lawsuits specifically have to do with the air traffic controllers in this country. When you have the Obama administration, the FAA under his watch, they were being sued. The FAA is because of what happened under Barack Obama. Is prime example of alleged cancellation of job offers to those nearly 1,000 would-be air traffic controllers because the Barack Obama administration said that class is too white. So we need to cancel all of those qualified applicants in order for the priority of making us more of a diverse staff in our nation's airports. That just makes things dangerous. And that is evidence enough, I think, to warrant an investigation into, okay, did DEI play a role in this tragedy, not only in Virginia, just outside of D.C., but potentially just a few days later in Pennsylvania?
Absolutely. And I think even just setting aside these horrific crashes that we've seen in the skies, it's important to identify the fact that DEI is a toxic force, and it's being used to replace the old guard of meritocracy. That's really what's going on here, is President Trump and many, many others want to get back to the days of meritocracy where the only thing that matters is your ability to do the job extremely well. Things like your competency, your experience, your education, tangible qualifications, not immutable characteristics like the color of your skin or your eyes. So I think, it's really important we focus on that point. And on that note, I'd like to ask you, why do you think there is so much backlash right now to the idea of meritocracy?
Well, I think, it goes back to Marxist ideology. If you want to get real deep on this, why are they so opposed to meritocracy and hard work and things of that nature? Because, there was a museum in our nation's capital initially to celebrate, African Americans. And when you walked into that museum initially, it had a list of things that are just too white. These are white priorities that we reject. And on that list were things like hard work, showing up to work on time, taking care of your family, being self-aware and responsibility and, self-confrontation. Those things somehow were too white. And I think to myself, okay, what is the most successful demographic in this country? Do we know what that is when it comes to success in your career or academic success? Turns out it's Nigeria. The Nigerians in the United States are the most successful demographic, and they are not white. They are truly African American, but they have a different mindset when it comes to meritocracy. You have to earn your place, whether it's in the workforce or in your status in your community or in society, not based on race. And these initiatives, the heart of DEI, these programs, and I'm thankful there are lawsuits now going against it, but the heart of it is that they're not inclusive. They are outright discriminatory.
Yes.
But I think the reason why there's so much pushback, to answer your question, is because many of our journalists, many of our current politicians and our leaders have been taught since probably the 1960s in our academic institutions that this is the way to go. Marxist thought, critical theory, whether it's based on critical race theory or critical gender theory, you name it, it's all meant to divide groups. It's tribalism, and you identify people based on, as you said, immutable traits. And then you assign to those individuals their character, their mindset, whether they're born into privilege or if they're outright racist. I heard another DEI trainer, a coach the other day saying, I do not believe that white people are born human. That was a lesson being given, and I believe that was in a university setting, forced DEI training programs. And I've been through them myself, and that is the message. If you have a certain color skin, you may not even be human, but you're definitely racist.
Wow. Okay, so Tom, I have to ask you then, because we've seen the implementation of DEI initiatives, certainly in other fields, maybe not to the same possible detriment, but I do want to ask you about that. I mean, we go from, say, pilots to surgeons, doctors, physicians. This is getting very dangerous. And I do want to ask you, I mean, there's this idea that maybe it would take some horrible catastrophe in one of those fields for people to finally realize just how toxic DEI is. What do you think about that?
I'm concerned that even in those times of tragedy, we still won't admit it as a country. We just saw what happened in Virginia and in Pennsylvania, and there may be DEI connections to it, and yet most people don't want to recognize it. We've seen this kind of deniability, in a sense, or this gaslighting when it comes to things like illegal immigration. There's no crime here. There's no crisis. It's the same thing with diversity, equity, inclusion. It's like it's happening in front of you, but you can't acknowledge that it's happening right in front of you. I am very concerned when it comes to the medical field because I think it's already been infiltrated. We've seen that in these various medical academic institutions where you have to prioritize immutable traits. You know, healthcare professionals, I mean, there's a lot of worry within the industry that prioritizing diversity, these benchmarks in hospitals and medical schools are weakening overall patient care. And you have the Department of Health and Human Services under Joe Biden and previously Barack Obama spending, nearly $40 million on DEI initiatives, embedding equity across hundreds of these funding programs. Favoritism, basically, it's not equality, it's favoritism based on skin color or gender identity. That becomes a priority over your qualifications and your merit and your experience and your skill set. And that should be very concerning to most Americans. I think the healthcare industry, the aviation industry are two great examples of how this can have life or death consequences.
Absolutely, it does. This is very serious. So I hope that people are sort of coming away from this movement. I hope as we move forward with this new administration, we can ditch the days of DEI and really just get back to qualifications, judging people by the content of their character above anything else, and really focusing on making sure that the best and brightest get hired in every single field. That's what we want. That's what people deserve. So I think it's really important that we move past this horrible chapter of DEI because it's just been so horrific for so many reasons. But having said that, Tom, thank you for stopping by. I so appreciate your time.
Always appreciate being with you, Riley. Congratulations on the new show, by the way.
Thank you.